Hi, Phil here again. One of the videos in the series for the Maths-C Professional Development course. Today I'm going to talk about the general objectives and how we might use them in a classroom, how they fit into things like assessment, etc. So let's begin. The general objectives, as we know from the senior maths courses, the old knowledge and procedures, modelling and problem solving, communication and justification, and the effective. And I think the effective one is pretty important, where we can really make kids enjoy what they're doing and see that some things that we do in class are actually pretty cool, and celebrate those new learnings in a way that the students actually enjoy what they're doing, rather than just go through a set of, procedures. The Maths-C general objectives are slightly different from the Maths-B ones. Knowledge and procedures are pretty much exactly the same. There's one little attachment, as you can see. I've just taken an extract here from the syllabi. The top one being the Maths-B one, and the bottom one is the Maths-C extract for knowledge and procedures. And as you can see down the bottom there, I've just highlighted that the new addition there is the demonstrating knowledge and use of nature of mathematical proof. And I think what we need to do is look at the wording there and have a look at it from the point of view. It doesn't actually say that kids necessarily have to prove things, but they understand the nature of mathematical proof. And I think that's pretty important that we make that distinction. Similarly for Maths-C and the modelling and problem solving, this is the list, direct takedown from the Maths-C syllabus. They're exactly the same as the Maths-B one, but except you can see at the bottom there I've highlighted the only addition and difference in wording there is that we ask Maths-C students to modify the mathematical models as appropriate, and that might mean we might have a particular model, say for example a water slide, give them certain parameters, and we might change those parameters and ask students to modify the models in some sort of way. And that's the only difference between the good old Maths-B and the Maths-B in terms of modelling and problem solving. With communication justification, here it's just the only one that I thought rather than fill up the page with microtype, is in the Maths-C that, as you can read there, it's about providing supporting arguments in the form of a proof, and so on. I'm not going to read it all there, but again, that's just the difference between the Maths-C and the Maths-B general objectives. And I think that if you have a look at the wording again, when you're asking Maths-C students to actually do a proof, we're not going to just use a special case to illustrate the fact that it works. And this is going to come up in one of the examples a little bit later. Now, I think it's important that if we're going to assess students on the general objectives, and this is going to come up in our assessment unit a little bit further through the course, I think we've got to teach it, and we've got to be explicit in how we do that. If you read the syllabus there, I've just done a little extract there from the Maths-C syllabus in page 30, and it says what we're really asking the kids to do is to make judgments on how well the students meet the general objectives of the course. And that's what we're going to do in assessment in terms of making judgments about the students' work. I don't think you'll find anywhere it says that they've got to do 92% of the questions correctly. So we've got to be careful, we've got to be doing that. I think also, if we're going to be explicit, we need to look at the activities and that we do in class, and see if we can frame the questions and the activities that we do in class around those general objectives. So we'd also marry up, you know, we're going to teach this content today, but here's why we're doing it in terms of the general objectives. Which, that last little point there is, I guess we're going to use that content to deliver those must-do, those not negotiables, the general objectives. So here's just a couple of examples how we might just change prove root 2 is irrational. We might ask the students to show algebraically the proof that root 2 is irrational. So just the wording of what we're asking the students to do. So we're being a little bit more explicit in saying you've got to address the issue of algebra, demonstrating number and algebraic facility. Similarly, we can show that matrixes addition is commutative by using examples, but we might ask the students to do that algebraically, and again, it's demonstrating that algebra sense. One activity that I used to like to do was I'd start this in Year 10, but when we get into Math C, but we now use a little bit more complex sort of way of looking at it, would be to show that two successive triangular numbers makes a square number. So in Year 10 I might be using diagrams to do that and a little bit of algebra. But in Year 12 or 11, depends on when you're doing it in the course that your school has described, and you might ask them to do that algebraically, but then you might ask them to illustrate that as an example of how it works. So we're not actually just getting them to show that 3 plus 6 is 9. Two triangular numbers make up a square number. Similarly, one little problem I like to do there is, and it's demonstrating number sense, would be if we're doing structures and patterns, to get them to find in the first 100 triangular numbers which ones of those are square numbers. And there's some really pretty interesting discussions that would happen in a classroom, and I think some really robust discussions with students on how you would actually do that. And I think that's the way that you couch it in terms of, we're actually demonstrating here what are the features of these particular things we're trying to teach. But we're demonstrating number sense by doing that, and we're being explicit in what we're saying with the students to try and link those to those general objectives that we're demanding of the kids. Well, thanks for watching. I hope this sows a few seeds of thought for you. The general objectives, pretty important. You've got to make sure that, I think that if we're going to assess it, we definitely have to assess it. Goodbye for now.